I'd like to call this meeting to order on Wednesday, April 13th at 5:31 p.m. This meeting is being recorded by the Appointments and Ordinance Committee. If any other persons present are doing the same, please notify me at this time. Seeing none, I will assume that it's only appointments and ordinances that are taping this. No person shall address a meeting of a public body without permission of the chair, and all persons shall at the request of the chair be silent. No person shall disrupt the proceedings of a meeting of a public body. If after clear warning from the chair, a person continues to disrupt the proceeding, the chair may order the person to withdraw from the meeting, and if the person does not withdraw, the chair may authorize a constable or other officer to remove the person from the meeting or expel them from WebEx.
Councilor Gwynn, we do have a call-in user, and Tammy has joined the meeting.
Okay.
This is Yansky.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out how to get the thing up on my computer as well so that I can see you, but I don't have a camera.
Okay. I have not done roll yet, Councilor Lapiensky, so you're right on cue. I'm going to do that now.
Okay.
Councilor Gwynn is present. Councilor Bullock.
Here.
Councilor Forgy.
Here.
Councilor Jarvis.
Here.
Councilor Lapiensky.
Here. Or on the phone.
Oh, that's fine. I see all the councilors are here, and I just want to make mention that Councilor DeSorger is on the agenda tonight for when we get to rules of procedure. If Councilor DeSorger joins the meeting, she is able to speak with us today because she's invited as a guest. Councilor Lapiensky also submitted him, but because he is on our committee, we don't risk having a quorum and such outside of the meeting. Can I have someone make a motion to accept the meeting minutes from March 9th?
So moved, Jarvis. Seconded, 4G.
I have, the motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Any clarifications? Seeing none, the meeting will accept the meetings. Public hearings, we have none. So that brings us to our only motions of the evening. I want to go over a couple of things before we start our motions this evening. It's procedure in appointments and ordinances when we are submitted a list of mayoral appointments or reappointments, that if any counselor has any questions or concerns about any of the candidates, that they reach out to me. And at that point, I will take a look and pursue any concerns they might have. And then I will talk to the mayor and try to have that information processed before we get to the full council floor. There were some questions asked about some of the appointments. So I've asked Councilor Forgy this evening, when she helps me to read these nominations, instead of reading it as one full slate, in this situation, she's just going to read the opener and each of the bulleted points on the order. And we'll just talk at that point. And if anyone has any questions, what is going to happen moving forward is any of the appointments or reappointments that have a unanimous recommendation from us will be pooled together on council floor. And if we had some that had any votes not in favor, to reject or to abstain, they'd be handled as individuals. So that'll keep our agenda moving forward. Everybody, any questions on that from anyone? Seeing none. Yes, Councilor Lapiensky, go ahead.
So apologize. The first part of what you said was a little bit muddled. If one of us has concerns about any of the appointments, we should do what as opposed to what?
Okay, you're going to reach out to me prior to the meeting. And then it lets me take a look at things because by ordinance, section 2-10, the city council shall refer each such name as it's submitted to a standing committee of the city council, which is us, which shall investigate each candidate for appointment and shall make a report with recommendations to full council. So that's what we do. So if someone has a question about an individual candidate, instead of putting an accusation on the full council floor, it allows me to pursue it prior to the meeting and come back if there's any concerns or talk to the mayor about her reasonings. So that's it. We just did that because prior years there was some disruption of council meetings because we were having councilors refuse to vote for any of the nominees or make an accusation that we couldn't back up. So it's just a way to make sure that before it gets to discussion, we know what we're, if there was any concerns. Did you get that, Jasper?
I'm sorry, I was muted. So I'm a little confused because we're in the Appointments and Ordinance Committee. Are you saying that I am not allowed to voice concerns about any appointments in this committee?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you had a concern, say you wanted to tell me that one of the mayoral appointments was arrested for, stealing at Home Depot, and you just made that accusation at a council meeting, there'd be no time to react to whether that was hearsay or an actual situation. So by submitting those kind of things to me ahead of time, it enables me to do some research so I can say this concern is warranted, or I did some research and I have no finding. It just allows us not to have any a moment of information that could be considered defamatory to any candidate or such like that. It's not in any way stops us from having a discussion.
Right, but so I guess the question is, I understand why we would not want to bring those kinds of things to full council without having discussed it here. But what I thought you said is we have to bring it to you privately before we even discuss it here, and that's what it's new information to me.
Oh, that's
I may
okay.
or may not have.
No, if that's all right, I'm not going to tell you can't do anything. I'm just going to tell you that we're trying to make the process not be anything that we was not expected or what have you. But no, this committee, we're in discussion, so discussion is discussion. I might choose to stop the discussion if I feel that it violates anyone's any situation that needs warranted discussion.
Got it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sure, no problem. Ask questions anytime. If you don't understand something, it's hard to follow a procedure that's new or what have you, anytime. That being said, any other questions or discussion? Councillor Forgy, would you like to start to read these motions for us?
Yes, no problem.
Page 6.
Yeah. Okay. This is order number fiscal year 22-129. The City Council moved that it be ordered that the Greenfield City Council, pursuant to Charter 2-10, affirms the following appointments and reappointments by the mayor to the following appointments: Council on Aging, Michelle Delicio, term expires December 31st, 2024.
Do you have a second on that for discussion?
Second, Jarvis.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. This is a Council on Aging appointment from the mayor, Michelle Delicio. She has information within the packet. Is there any questions, comments, anything on that appointment? Any discussion? Councilor Bullock? Oh, okay, I didn't know if you were, okay. Any discussion? I do not believe Michelle is on the call. This would be a time if she wanted to speak. She is able to do that. Seeing none, I see no reason that there's any concern here, and I see nobody wanting to discuss. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We'll send a positive unanimous recommendation to full council. Councilor Forgy?
GCET Board of Commissioners, Amy McMahon, term expires June 30th, 2023, parentheses, short term to replace David Lanoy, end parentheses.
Can I have a second for discussion?
Second, Jarvis.
Is there any discussion on this appointment for the short term to replace David Lanoy? I just say Amy McMahon is a business owner in downtown Greenfield, a huge contributor to our Greenfield and serves in a lot of capacities. She's be an asset to the community. Anyone else?
I agree.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, we'll send a positive unanimous recommendation. Clerk Scott is on the line this evening. Point of clarification, Clerk Scott, do we have to read the 2.10 thing, or can we just continue in this form because we're in subcommittee? Would that be appropriate?
I think with the explanation that you gave on how the
Okay.
appointments were going to proceed, I think that suffices.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Forgy.
Welcome.
Greenfield Local Cultural Council, Empress Benu, term expires December 31st, 2024.
Can I have a second?
Second, Jarvis.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion, or is the candidate on this call? Seeing none, I appreciate them stepping forward. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, we'll send a positive unanimous recommendation. Councilor Forgy?
Greenfield Redevelopment Authority, Ashley Stemple Ray, term expires December 31st, 2024.
Can I have a second?
Second, Jarvis.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on Ashley? I don't think Ashley's on. She did send documentation through. Any discussion? As we know, Ashley served as counselor and council president and went off last year. Any discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstention.
We have one abstention.
And before we go to the next one, may I ask a general question about this subject?
Of course. Let me just finish this one. We'll send a a positive recommendation with one abstention. Go ahead, Councilor Lapinski.
Why is it that the documentation that comes to us is something to the effect of a resume from the person? Because the reason I ask is, since they're termed the mayor's appointments, I would imagine that the documentation would be the mayor's appeal to us that she likes this candidate as opposed to the candidate's appeal to us for the job. Maybe I'm
Correct.
wrong, but that's why I'm...
No, that's really how it works. What normally happens, if you can see in some of our literature here, a position is identified, and it happens one of two ways. The mayor either reaches out to someone and asks them, would you be willing to serve in this position if they have an opening? Maybe she has noticed someone in the community that she feels would be good on a committee, or and she can do that. Or as it appears with Councilor former Councilor Stemple and Wheeler and a few, that they sent in a interest to the mayor, and then the mayor thinks. And then what has always happened is, for as long as I can remember, so for at least the last 20 years, they then send in their supporting information to help with their confirmation or affirmation in this case, to avoid possible rejection, to the mayor. And the mayor then sends that to us to help in our decision, because on a lot of times we don't know anything about the candidate or the person. So it helps us to understand, if she's putting them on, a committee for disability, maybe they served in some role, or they're going on a board that a degree they might have obtained or such might be helpful in that role. So it just gives us a little information. We then invite them. It used to be standard that we would invite them to this meeting and they would talk to us, and then they would come and talk to the full council. And over the years, that has eroded, and we don't do that as much as we used to. But I, in turn, when I took over appointments and ordinances, reinstituted the policy that I would love to hear from the candidates if they would like to speak with us. Does that help, Councilor Lapinski?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Councilor Forgy?
Greenfield Redevelopment Authority, Otis Wheeler, term expires December 31st, 2024, parentheses, to replace Charlene Golanka, end parentheses.
That motion's been made. Do I have a second?
Second, Jarvis.
That motion's been made and seconded. As we know, the Otis served as a counselor, and you saw his resume here. I had received some feedback on former Councilor Wheeler. I did some questions and thought, and I saw nothing that would prohibit him from serving. So I will bring that forward as a candidate. Any discussion on this reaffirmment? Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Councilor Lapinski, did I hear from you yet? I didn't want to miss you.
I'm in favor.
Okay. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Any abstentions? I will abstain from this vote, and I will send a positive recommendation with one abstention and one no vote. Councilor Forgy.
Historical Commission, David Brock, term expires June 30th, 2023, parentheses, short term to replace Travis I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, McLevy.
Can I have a second?
Second, Jarvis.
Thank you, Councillor Jarvis. If there's any of these candidates that I've missed that might have popped on, please recognize yourself and then I'll recognize you. Any discussion on the Historical Commission affirmation? Any? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, I will submit a positive unanimous recommendation. Councillor Forgy?
Human Rights Commission, Empress Binu, term expires June 30th, 2023, parentheses, short term to replace Kaj Pratt, end parentheses.
Can I have a
Again, my
second?
apologies if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly.
Can I have a second?
Jarvis.
Thank you, Councillor Jarvis. I'd just like to recognize that I'd like to thank them for stepping forward in two roles on the same on the same evening. So unless they're they've been asked to serve in two capacities, and I appreciate the step forward. As one is a short term, going only till June, and then the other one is a till the 24th of December of next year. Any other discussion, comments?
Question, Lapiensky.
Yes.
What does short-term mean?
It means they're replacing someone that, for whatever reason, gave up that position, or there was a reason there was a short term in that board, and so we're just the mayor is just filling that role until the next time the opening comes up.
I see. So in other words, it has to do with it coming up at a time other than December 31st, it seems like.
Or
June 30th.
June 30th could be the appointing time for that board. Human Rights Commission appointments could expire on June 30th, and then we'll get a list of more. And for some reason, there is someone that is no longer on the board. And to get us to a voting capacity, some of these boards have small memberships, and it's hard to get a majority, and they can't make any rulings. So they appoint someone to the position. So there's a voting majority in the short term. And then I'm guessing in June, but prior to June 30th, we'll get an appointment for the full term from the mayor to put someone on that commission available.
Got it.
Please remind me, did we vote on this? I don't think so, right? All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, we'll send a positive unanimous recommendation. Councillor Forgy.
Planning and Construction, Amy Proretti, parentheses, School Committee Designee, term expires December 31st, 2022.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah, Lapiensky.
Sure. Go ahead, Councillor Lapiensky.
Someone else wants to go first, that's fine. I just want to make sure you know I have something to say.
Okay, no, I just wanted to make mention, just because of the newness of some of your questions, is that's the school committee designee. So this isn't a mayoral, this is a mayoral appointment, but this is who the school committee has put forward to fill that role, because in the planning and construction makeup, it says that there'll be a school committee designee. You'll sometimes find that the council has a designee that the council president or the body does. In this case, this is the school committee designee to serve in the planning and construction committee for the mayor in the function as indicated by charter or ordinance that the school committee has a designee to that committee. Councilor Lapinski, go ahead.
So that much was clear. Thank you for that explanation in case any members of the public watching were
Sure.
not aware. I'm not going to, per your previous instruction, make a huge stink about it with specifics, but I want to say I have grave concerns about this nominee, and I think that we should not vote to approve it. I can give more detail if you want.
I mean, if you want to quantify that, that's fine. If you just want to express what you did, we will take that under advisement.
I mean, I'll basically say that I think she has done a tremendous disservice to our school system as a whole, and has acted with callous disregard for the students and the general body of the Greenfield school system. And so while we as the city council cannot stop her from being on the school committee, we definitely should not condone her being in any other role. And even if that's who the school committee put forward under, of course, her iron fist, we as the council have the right to say, no, school committee, you are not allowed to forward this nominee, and that's what we should be doing.
Okay. Is there any other discussion from any other of the councilors on this committee, on this affirmment? And remember, as we move forward, just a reminder too, it's our task to affirm them, not to approve. We affirm. So there's a difference in that terminology.
What is that? It is not our job to affirm. It is our job only to affirm if we affirm. We have the
Correct.
option to vote.
It's our job to reject or affirm. Yep.
Correct. So it requires our approval in order for the nominee to get confirmed.
Correct. Yep. The reasoning behind that, Councilor Lapinski, is in the past, the motions would come through as we accept, and that's not the role. So there's always just that point of clarification. Is there any other discussion on this candidate? No, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Lapinski and Jarvis, it looks like.
Jarvis.
So we have 2 opposed and 2 in favor. I will vote in favor, and we will send this to council as a split decision, but a positive recommendation. Councilor Forgy.
Reappointments to the GCET Board of Commissioners. Timothy Farrell, term expires June 30th, 2025.
Any discussion on Timothy Farrell? As you know, Tim Farrell served as council and also served in the past as selectman for Greenfield. Any other discussion on that affirmation? None? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, Dan, I think you needed a second on it, and I'll second it for you.
Thank you. Thank you for watching me, Ed. That motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? I'm sorry. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, that would be a positive unanimous recommendation. Councilor Forgy?
Jennifer Stromston, term expires June 30th, 2025.
Second, Jarvis.
Thank you. Councilor Jarvis. Is there any discussion on Jennifer Stromson? Anyone? Another person that contributes a lot to our community. Any discussion? Jasper, if I'm missing you at all just because you're on the phone, especially tonight, just call out to me, okay?
You don't have to worry about that.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Lafiansky. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, we'll send a unanimous recommendation, positive.
John Howland, term expires June 30th, 2024.
Second, Jarvis.
That has been made and seconded. As we know, John Howland is the president of Greenfield Savings and is involved in many things here in the city. Any discussion on John Howland? Appreciate all that he does. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, we'll send a positive unanimous recommendation. Councilor Forgy.
David Russell, term expires June 30th, 2024.
Second, Jarvis.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion on David Russell. Any discussion on that candidate? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, we'll send a positive unanimous recommendation. I thank you for allowing this to proceed like it did tonight. I just want to, as I do every time we have a list of mayoral appointments and reappointments, I would like to just thank all of the people that step forward and want to volunteer to serve our boards and our committees. It's what makes a strong municipality. And I thank each and every one of you. If I didn't thank you as I was going through each candidate, I want to just thank candidates that step forward. If you're out there and you're wanting to get involved in government, please reach out to the mayor and let her know. Councilor Forgy.
Okay, there's a discrepancy, I think, there's a discrepancy between the list that I just read off, which was the motion, and the agenda, because there's a mayor's appointment for Community Preservation Committee.
Yep.
It's on our agenda.
Tammy or Kathy, you're both here in some capacity. It's on our agenda, so it's not on the motion, but is there any reason that we can't read that into?
If I may, it was an appointment that came after the 5-day rule. And
Okay.
at committee chairs, President Gilmore allowed it to come in. So it's a separate,
Okay.
it's a separate motion and it's a separate order.
Okay.
There should be an order, a separate order and a separate memo.
It probably just falls after all the resumes, Tammy. So I appreciate that clarity. Let me just jump ahead.
I think it's page 30.
Thank you for that. And I appreciate Councilor Forgy. I see the memo. It's page 29. Would someone like to read this motion? Councilor Forgy, Councilor Bullock, someone want to read this or?
I'll read it if you want.
Okay,
me
go
to.
ahead. Thanks, Councilor
I'll
Forgy.
read it. I'll read it from the memo. Let me see, just hang on a second. Okay, fiscal year 22-136. The City Council ordered that it be moved that the Greenfield City Council, pursuant to Charter Section 2-10, affirms the following appointment by the mayor to the Community Preservation Committee, Donna Dussel, parentheses, as a replacement for Barb Zacchio, and parentheses, for a 3-year term to expire June 30th, 2025.
And do I have a second?
Second, Jarvis.
Thank you, Councilor Jarvis. So that motion has been made and seconded. We do have the memo from the mayor. We do have the resume. All right. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, we'll send a positive unanimous recommendation. And I appreciate where I skipped back over that you brought that up, Councilor Forgy. Now we have followed the agenda, which I was checking off. I just hadn't gotten there yet. So we appreciate that. All right. That's our only motions for the evening. That moves us to discussion. And the first discussion item, I want to have a moment to talk. As you know, I was out of the country and then I got back. I have not reached out to Councilor Bullock in any way, shape, or form, as I promised I would do, as we try to work on the code of ethics. There was a couple of things that were submitted from Liz Gilman and some conversation from President Gilmore with some insertion. I would recommend, unless Councilor Bullock has something she would like to bring forward tonight, I would like to keep discussion to a minimum on this tonight till I do my homework and do what I'm supposed to have done. And we spend more time on the rules of procedure. But that's just me. So, Councilor Bullock, any comment on that? Because I did ask you to be my partner in this, and then I just left you. I have not even reached out, and I apologize.
That's okay. I have read the documents. I don't think that they are ready to be brought forward yet.
Okay. Does anyone have any discussion as it pertains to the code of conduct or code of ethics or whatever we end up bringing forward? Anybody? All right. We're just going to move forward. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Lopinski.
I just want to reiterate the one statement that I made last time, which is that what constitutes ethical conduct is going to vary widely across cultures, between individuals, depending on the context and the time frame. And so while I think it's important to act ethically, I don't think it's necessarily set in stone what that is. As the Supreme Court said in, I believe, around 1980, when they said that one person's vulgarity is another person's song lyric. I also have one question about the difference between agenda items 5 and 6, which is, how does something go from a discussion item to a motion? What is the method and who's in charge of it?
The chair or the authority on that. So what's going to happen is we will discuss it for a period of time. A discussion, unless there is a time element involved, like an appointment where it has a calendar, a clock from when we receive it, or something that might come in as a petition where a time element is involved. Discussion is determined by this committee in this case. I asked about ethics, if you want to call it that, or conduct, which we have one. All we're doing is reviewing it. This is not an introduction, but a look at what we've had. So we talk about it. We decide that we get to a point. At some point, Councilor Bullock and I might say, hey, do you think what we've got, we've done our homework, let's bring it forward. At that point, it's still under discussion. And once we're to the point, then I move it to come as a motion. And the motion would say to establish a code of conduct or ethics or reaffirm or change, however the discussion comes, because I don't know if establish is the right word or correct or add or so we would bring it forward at that point as a motion. And then it does the same thing. It gets put on an agenda. Might not be the next month. It could be the month after. It comes back to this advisory board. We then read it as a motion and we go through the process of discussion of each piece of it. And then we make a recommendation.
Got it. So do I, as a member of the committee, and I have no intention of doing anything like this tonight, but hypothetically, if there were an issue I wanted to make a motion in, would I have the right to make a motion within this committee? In other words, are you the sole arbiter of motion in this committee, or do I, as a member, have the ability to make a motion?
I would have to check on that. I don't want to speak out of tune because I don't like to make mistakes. So I would find out that procedure. But I believe to put it on the agenda, you can submit a motion, and that motion can be taken under the authority of the chair. And once again, and decide whether it's a discussion on the motion or the motion would be added to because we're an advisory committee. But I'll find out for you.
All right, thank you. I may look into it as well.
Feel free. All right. Is there any other discussion on the Code of Ethics that we did? Any for tonight? Okay.
Wait, sorry, I do.
Go ahead, Councilor Bullock. I'm sorry.
I know we said we weren't going to talk about it, but I just want to say that I actually agree with you, Jasper, that understanding of ethics and conduct and respectability varies widely between cultures. And I think what I'm feeling called to task with this is to create some kind of agreements among us as a governing body that spells out that we won't tolerate specific things like harassment, discrimination, specific kinds of behavior. And so I'm not interested in a broad spectrum, open-ended, what is ethics? I'm interested in very specifically speaking to the ways that as city councilors, we will agree to treat each other and the public.
Thank you for that, Councilor Bullock. And whatever you bring forward, I will happily review it and see if I concur.
That's thank you, Councilor Bullock, because I feel that that's what we're trying to accomplish is just a platform that gets our business done and how we treat each other and respect each other. I've said this for years, I disagree with my wife on a daily basis and we've been together for 40 years. So it doesn't mean that I have to agree all the time. You just have to respect the people that you work with. And that's what I'm looking for. I just want to go back to where if we have a difference of opinion that we are civil in our actions. And that's my role, I think, in looking at this. So thank you. Anybody else? All right, so we'll put that on a future discussion. And Councilor Bullock, in follow-up, I will reach out to you so we can, get some ideas and look at stuff that's already in place and see where we want to go and then bring it forward. Keeping in mind what Councilor Bullock and I might bring forward is, once again, it's the opinion of two people. We're a group of five. We can take a look at it, and if her and I can decide that it's a good idea, maybe we can be persuasive in our thoughts or at least share them. Okay, moving on, our discussion of proposed amendments to the rules of procedure, including the additional amendments. So I would like to thank the clerk's office. So if you remember the last time, we did not have the clerk or Tammy with us. They might have been on, but we did not have discussion with them. So we kind of went through it and we had some questions. So what they did, and this is in your packet starting on page 37, they went through and Councillor DeSorger and Councillor Lapiensky brought by some ideas for discussion, and they put them in as a strike-through version by color code. So if it's in the draft proposal, if it came from the clerk, it's in green. If it came from our administrative assistant, it's in orange. If it came from Councillor DeSorger, it's in blue. If it came from Councillor Lapiensky, it's in purple. And this is just to help us on this strike through. Once again, we're at the discussion level, which means we're discussing. So I think we could go through this and we'll look at the strike throughs. We'll once again, if it's coming from our administrative assistant, we have Clerk Scott and our assistant was on the call, so we can ask questions. Any objection to going through it like that? And we'll go through it and get as far as we get. It doesn't mean we'll finish the project in an evening or that we'll entertain the information. We might have to go back and get some backup information. So let's start on page 38.
Councillor Gwynn, Tammy is still on the call.
Okay.
To let you know.
And let me just ask to both you and Clerk Scott, would you like to make any kind of presentation, or do you feel that it would be best that we talk about the strike-through version, and then if there's questions from this committee, they could ask them and then you would answer?
I am fine with however you would like to proceed.
Okay. And Tammy, does that work for you also?
Yeah, that would, I think that would work.
Okay. All right. So organizational meeting. There was an asterisk on biennial. The regular biennial is starred city elections. So the explanation, there was some confusion in the city council organized following biennial elections of every January. Inserting biennial would clarify that question and result in a smoother transition and prevent burdensome changes of the new committee members that would require coming into the middle of a highly involved issue or topic. So we talked about this last time, and I think this was one that we were pretty understanding on why it just puts us in compliance. Is there any discussion on this? Anything I'm missing? Councillor Forgy.
Thank you. You know, I think that the inserting biennial makes sense. I think the bigger question is, by inserting biennial, does that therefore mean that we elect our officers on a biennial basis or an annual one?
If I may, the reason why there was confusion is because according to the way it's worded, it says the first business day in January following the regular city elections. Well, it's my understanding, and Clerk Scott can correct me on this, regular city elections are biannual, they're not annual. And so I think not having the biannual in there specifically, I think there was a lot of confusion. However, if the council is more comfortable, excuse me, if the council is more comfortable having an annual organizational meeting, then I'm sure we can probably change the wording to reflect January following, or forgive me, I stumble a lot. So
oh, no, that's okay.
Doing fine.
by the time it comes from my brain to my mouth, I totally forgot what I'm speaking another language. But
I've made a career out of that, so don't worry.
But I think if the council would rather do annual organizational meetings instead of meetings every regular city election, which is biannual, then there should probably be different wordings specifying that you would like annual organizational meetings and not just organizational meetings every regular city election cycle, which is biannual.
Tammy, that actually made perfect sense. Don't worry about it. So
I'm
right
glad I
now,
asked somebody.
right now we're out of compliance with this rule of procedure because we do have an annual organization meeting. We're not following the regular election. We have one annually. We've always had one annually. It would be my recommendation to change the wording on our rules of procedure to say there will be a annual reorganization meeting of the council because that's when we elect our officers and that's when we take a look at it. I don't know what would be the determining factor. It says the first business day in January. I think that's fine. It could say the first business day of each year in January.
Okay, I will work on that.
Any other thoughts?
Bianski?
Sure. Go ahead, Councilor Lapiansky.
Can the chair see the raise hand button on the screen, or should I just speak up?
Just speak out tonight. I cannot see the raised hand in this scenario, and there's only 6 of us. So just get my attention. However you want to do that, say just like you did, Councilor Lapiansky, and then I'll get to you as soon as possible.
Sure. So I concur that it's probably best to reorganize annually, if only because the work of the council president is so much that we may not have people willing to do it if it's a 2-year term. Just my opinion. But I think it may be more practical to have the organizational meeting in December because the first business day in January is often during a period when people are out of town.
It has to do with the annual. Clerk Scott, you want to answer that?
So in December, every other year when there's a biennial election, in December, there will be councilors elect that have not taken the seat, that have not taken the oath of office yet. So they can't vote because they don't sit in the seat. So it has to be in January after they've taken the oath of office. It doesn't have to be the first business day. It can be the second Tuesday or whatever you choose. Because I do hear you, Councilor Lapiansky, the first business day is not always convenient for everyone, but it does have to be after people have taken the oath of office.
So building off of what Councilor Lapiansky brought up, could it say there will be an annual reorganization meeting held in January?
It could.
And then it would be up to the president or the clerk to say, well, January 1st this year is actually on the 1st. Monday's the 1st, and that's not a business day, but Tuesday the 2nd is a business day. It gives a little bit of, but it does say January of the year. As soon as, could we keep that open? I think Councilor Lapiansky is correct in that, it could fall on a day, but most holidays are not business days. So that's why that terminology had worked. Any other thought?
Right.
I don't think anyone else would object to January or the first business day in January. I think given that, and then obviously it's moved a little bit in the past. All right. Any other discussion on this item? All right. So let's just instruct to go with that thoughts. This is discussion, so we don't have to vote, but anyone opposed to going forward with it in that form? We're going to have another shot at this before it's all done. So this is just to get there. Okay. Oath of office, there's no changes. Election of officers. This was a maintenance piece. It would be president and vice president. And the reasoning is we are striking treasurer because the treasurer role has now fallen into the legislative, executive side, and it goes through the office of the, what's the office? Who's taking care of it now, Clerk Scott? Our budget goes through the clerk.
I oversee the council budget. And
So
John,
the other, if I could, Councilor Gwynn?
Yes, sure.
Okay. The charter made the change as well, so that there will no longer be a treasurer listed. And the
Okay.
rationale was that this was left over from years and years and years ago. And we do have ways and means of the council that keeps track of financial things, but also we have Clerk Scott and Tammy as well to look at that.
Who worked for the council?
I think it streamlines things a little bit more.
Okay. Any other discussion on that? Any thoughts? It does follow the new charter recommendations. Okay, seeing none, I have no objection to it moving forward like this. Anyone else? Okay.
Lapiensky, I have one thought on that, which is that there is a value in having a backup to the vice president in case, I don't know, there's some kind of a contagious illness and two people get sick at once or something along those lines.
Yeah.
It is probably not a critical issue, but I think it's one of those things where it ain't broke, let's not fix it because it's not hurting anything and it might possibly help at some point in the future.
No, I mean, you can, the biggest thing is the treasurer role is no longer part of the charter, so it's not a office that we would elect anymore. So it would be, it would be against charter. So there is a way of, in other parts, there's a way to replace officers that we covered in that period. So I appreciate that. But obviously, I think this follows city charter in eliminating treasurer. And I think our past treasurer was just on, and she could affirm that if the vice president gets hit by a bus, the treasurer doesn't become the vice president in our present form. So not that I'm going to be dodging buses anytime soon. Any other discussion on that?
Do we currently have a treasurer?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So at what point is that position eliminated by the charter?
Yeah, there is a designated time. Councilor Forgy?
Well, the charter is out to the mayor, and she will go ahead and send it out to Boston. When Boston approves it, it changes. So we have to go, at that point, we'd have to follow the charter. I think this is in anticipation of what will be approved in Boston on the charter.
And I know that we elected a treasurer, so we would be in compliance, and that was brought up.
Right.
Okay, moving forward. That's C, D, nothing D, E, F. Regular meetings. This was a recommendation. Would the council be interested in holding 2 regular meetings per month? In researching other cities, it was noted that several councils held 2 regular meetings a month, with the exception during the summer months. This may alleviate some issues associated with holding just 1. We were, Clerk Scott?
so after you're done this discussion, you need to jump back one section.
Oh, I see. F was in blue, not black. I apologize.
Yeah.
Let's just go back.
This one.
Get back to this. Let's follow order. I apologize. I wasn't noticing council orientation because it was in blue. I apologize. And that is brought up by Councilor DeSorger. I'm sorry, Ginny. Okay. Section F, council orientation. all counselors should have a 1-hour orientation with the clerk's office and a 1-hour orientation with the financial director of their designee. 1 hour should be the minimum required for each of the 2 meetings and should occur by February 15th annually at the latest. Counselor DeSorger, would you like to talk to us about this?
There's a reason I'm not on A&O. I just put some thoughts that I had on orientation into writing, and this is up for suggestion, but I think it would be a good thing to have something in writing that new counselors will have an orientation from the clerk's office and something from, the finance director. I also think when somebody becomes a committee chair, there's some things that they have to know. I didn't have that. I actually met with, I made a point of meeting, but I think it might be, you all can decide this, you're in charge. I just wrote in some suggestions. I think it's a good idea for people to have an orientation of some sort and if you put it in writing, then you sort of have to do it. And then I'm reading the language, which sounds rather harsh, and I didn't actually mean it. Like, I'm looking at it and I'd like maybe that you can fix that if you want. It has to be done by February 15th. I just thought to start business, I think people didn't know how to bring something forward. How do you get a chance to talk? So I thought early in the year, it sounds like you have to do this and you have to do that. So if you all want to make it a different time frame, it was a suggestion that I had for both things. That's all.
Councilor DeSorger, let me say a couple of things right off the bat. First, we are not in charge. Second of all, this is what works. This is what you're doing. What is supposed to happen? You bring it forward for discussion, and we discuss it. Don't apologize.
Okay.
This is what we need. Works out well. So let me just say, and Clerk Scott will probably agree with me, or maybe not, but we used to have to do this. When I became a counselor in 2007, we had an orientation. We had to go and meet with the clerk. We didn't meet with the finance director. We met with the clerk, and the clerk went through things. And I don't know if it was, this big formal thing, but there was a procedure. So over time, I think for the same reason you just mentioned, it went away because it wasn't written down anywhere. And that became, we don't have time this year. And then I believe the only thing that I thought this was lacking is it doesn't say new counselors, it says all counselors. And I don't necessarily think all counselors have to go for an hour. I think in your thought, new counselors and new committee chairs, I think would work out wonderfully because there are roles. When Councilor Forgy became Ways and Means chair last year, that didn't come with a handbook. It really doesn't. So to have that input, when I took over A&O, I was the chair of economic development, I think for 4 times in the past, but A&O was new to me. So I believe you're right. I think this is very well intended. And I think it goes, whether the specifics are an hour or they're February, that's discussion items. But I believe the nature of this is spot on. Clerk Scott, can I just, what's your opinion on this? You have to deal with the changing of the guard, not I.
Yeah. I think it's a great idea. So
all right, let's I'm sorry.
So no, I'm sorry. So the new counselors, and I don't mean to put anybody on the spot, but Ginny, you've been here 2 years. Marianne, you've just come on. Like, what are your questions? What do you want me to cover? Do you want me, please don't ask me to go through Robert's rules. Do you want me, right? Do you want us to say, and Tammy has done work on this. So before 2020, we were starting to put policies together. How do you do this? How do you propose a new item? How do you propose an amendment? How do you bring something to committee chairs? Does it need to go in writing? When you're in a meeting and you want to make an amendment, does the amendment need a motion? What do you want me to talk about?
Yes.
Because I am, and please feel free to laugh at this, I am much like Councillor Gwynn. I will talk for a very long time and I'll start in one place and I'll circle back around and I'll forget what I told you. So what do you want me to talk about? There are hands up, Councillor Gwynn, if you'd like.
Yeah, Councillor Bullock, let me recognize you. I saw you first.
Yeah, I actually asked for this. So Ginny, I appreciate you putting this in writing. Yeah, I think for me, like, I didn't even know when the meetings were. I didn't know that I would be on 2 committees on top of meetings, you know. So I think an overview of all of the different committees, exactly what you said, how does something move to a motion to proposal? How do you speak in a meeting? An overview of the sort of general cadence of the city council for the year, that I wasn't aware. Like, as soon as I was elected, like, bam, we're going into budget season, and so you're gonna
Hold on to your hat. Yeah.
you're gonna read for 3 hours a week on top of on top of everything else. So, like, a general overview. One of the other things that I did on my own, which I need to revisit, is they have an open meeting law training, that I also actually should, I think that should be a line in here that new counselors are required to do the open meeting law training by a certain, I think there's 2 a month. So I think, you know, if we said by March or something, that's probably realistic. But I have a lot of questions about the nitty gritty of open meeting law stuff. So some, you know, stuff around there. I'd be happy to sit down with you and like ask you my questions, and then maybe from there we can outline, you know, bullet points of some things. And I'm sure other counselors have great, like, we've watched newbies do this wrong.
Right. And Councillor Lapinski, you know, the same with you and Councillor Jarvis, and you know, if you have a topic, and believe me, I don't want to be at work at 6 o'clock for 3 hours talking about council, you know, so I would try to make it more concise. Like, but if you have a topic, if you have a question, I would love to hear them. And yeah,
Go, I'm sorry.
that's okay. And financial training too.
I think I'm going to recognize Councillor DeSorger in a moment, and then. But I also think there are things that we do now that could be rolled into this. You know, even like when Tammy tries to get people to do their parking passes. You know, there are things like that that could be put into this session instead of it being kind of no authority. Councillor Jarvis, I think you had your hand up. Was there anyone else?
Yeah, I asked to speak at the beginning. Lapinski.
Okay, Councillor DeSorger, let me just see. Did you, because you brought this forward, did I miss anything from you before I recognize Councillor Lapinski?
I'm happy to let others go. I did have a couple of specific suggestions.
Okay, Councillor Lapinski, go ahead.
I think this is a great idea. I would be happy to attend an orientation. I would be willing to try to come up with some outline questions for a hypothetical one as well if I were asked to do so. However, I do not believe that by charter we can require counselors to attend such an orientation as a condition of serving. I think it's a good idea. I think it is worthwhile suggestion, but I don't believe that we can amend the rules of procedure to prohibit an elected counselor from serving if they choose not to attend or can't for illness or some other reason. That's all I have to say. I think it's a great idea, and I hope we do it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jarvis?
Thank you. May I suggest instead of 8 hour or whatever with as a meeting that we have make some kind of handbook up. We all kind of give Kathy all of our questions that we remember that we when we were new counselors, what we had, what we came across, and we do a handbook and we hand out the handbook to the new counselors. The same thing with finance, and have Liz does a great PowerPoint about how taxes are driven and how we form our budget and everything else that she did the other night, and people probably missed it. That would be great as a handbook for people to read. They can peruse it at their own convenience, and if they had any questions from the two entities, they could get it clarified. And I think that would be a way to do it. But I do think it's a great idea. I mean, I'm familiar with Robert's rules because I had to know him as the union president for the fire department. So and I kept that book right at hand because you had to have it at hand. But yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think it would help out a lot. But I think maybe not a class or maybe not a designated hour, maybe a handbook. They hand out that says new counselors on it.
I think, Clerk Scott, I think if we even said they're to meet with the clerk and receive, the information. So there's at least a meeting appointed, and maybe not necessarily the length of time. You know what I mean? That up to you to get that information. Clerk Scott, you had something to say?
Yeah. Again, prior to COVID, Tammy was working on a handbook, including rules of procedure, the basic information. But yes, it was started, but it was never finished, or it never really got off the ground.
Going by what Councillor Lapinski just said and Councillor Jarvis said, even if F appeared here under council orientation and it said there shall be an orientation and handout of literature upon the election of a new councillor or a new committee chair is elected, or whatever. So it shows up that there's a procedure that needs to be followed without being too specific. Jenny, would that work for you and your thoughts?
Yes, there is something about just to offer that a little personal thing. I spent a personal hour with Director Gilman that was invaluable. And one thing but a handbook is fine. I'm amenable to whatever it is, but I do think, this is the will of the group. I just feel like that we got all in, and the first thing that we had to do was fill out a form. What did we want to be on? And like Mary Ann said, Councillor Bullock, I'm sorry, you didn't know what you were supposed to be on. And and I don't think everybody had to be mandated to do that, but there is something about meeting in person. This is how you do this, even to meet, but you can do that all however you want. I don't think people understood about being on two committees, and I particularly thought it was very difficult to becoming a committee chair. And Councillor Ricketts would help me with that a lot, because I thought, I don't know what to put on the agenda, but whatever everybody decides is best. I have heard other councillors talk about how they speak, like when is their turn to speak? When do you get to bring something forward? So that's all.
I don't believe this was meant in any way to be punitive, going back to what Councillor Lapinski said, but I think it needs to say that, upon the election of a new councillor, they'll meet with the clerk and receive the documentation and an orientation on, the duties of a councillor. And then, it is a recommendation. They also, meet with finance to understand, there are many people that were voting in the past on council and didn't know the difference between a capital budget and a fiscal budget. They cross over all the time. We're not born knowing some of this stuff. So that kind of orientation, I think having it in one place makes a lot of sense. So maybe to give some direction to Tammy or Clerk Scott, that we take out some of the specifics of this and say that upon the election of a councillor, the councillor will meet with the clerk's office receiving the information and an orientation, on a council, that kind of language. Would that be more in line with what we're all thinking?
If I may just clarify, I would suggest language that says something to the effect of new counselors encouraged to attend rather than required, because I think we would have to change the charter in order to require it.
In some of those points, I think you're correct. In a rules of procedure, the charter allows you to get more specific. It just can't conflict with the charter. So we have some ability to form our own rules and regulations within a committee or a department. Councilor Scott, correct?
Correct.
That would be
Clerk Scott, sorry.
So
I think I appreciate that. I just know that we can, change some of the things, requirements on how many meetings you can miss. There are things that rules of procedure cover. Any other discussion on this piece? All right, regular meetings. This is what I started to talk about. Would the council be interested in holding 2 regular meetings a month? And I read this before.
No.
Let's just talk about this. In the last meeting, there was no positive discussion on this whatsoever from this body. When we were having discussion, we said 1 meeting, let's do it, get business done, because there's, like Councilor Bullock said, 2 committees, and if you're on Ways and Means, you get 9 meetings in 8 weeks, or 6 weeks, or whatever it is. So, any other discussion on this? Because I think this is kind of a moot point. We could bring it forward, but I have no desire to do that.
If I may.
Sure.
Excuse me.
Of course.
When I was putting this together, I was thinking, because I've listened to a lot of meetings, and I listened to a lot of people who had comments about, meetings going too long, or the fact that with especially financial, we have to, wait 2 months, you'd get a first reading and then a second reading. And so my thinking towards this was maybe 2 meetings would maybe alleviate. However, listening to the discussion last month when you were discussing it, it does make a lot of sense that maybe 2 regular meetings is too much. And Councilor Lapiansky made a very good point that just because you have 2 meetings doesn't mean it's going to go short. It's going to, anything could happen. So, listening to you last month, I think I take your point. I think you have very valid points, and so I will withdraw this proposed amendment because of your input. It may not be right for this committee.
Thank you for that, Tammy. No, I appreciate the input. I think because we can have a special meeting as needed, we've had special meetings because, they want something voted on. It's not easy and it's a pain, but I think that's a good point. Anybody else would disagree on this? Okay, I think we can move forward. There's a 2 under here, under regular meetings, coming from Councilor DeSorger, that says councilors are required to have a 5-minute recess at all meetings anticipated to go beyond 9 p.m. Councilor DeSorger, do you want to just give us your thoughts on our 5-minute break?
This is a thought that I have. I know that at any time anybody can get up and take a break, and I never see. I've actually gone to the meetings ever since I moved here, so it's been years. People don't do that. we all know for your physical health that you should stand up and stretch and move around. And I thought they frequently go till after 10. So I just thought putting in a 5-minute break so everyone gets up. You're always trying to time it so that you're not missing anything. And I am just talking about your physical health, your back, your limbs. No one should be sitting in a chair that long, especially where we're going back to in person. It was fine when we were in our recliners for a long time there. So there you go. And I'm a nurse. I just feel strongly about how long we sit, and all those meetings, I never watched it. I know the television would be on, but maybe everybody would get to know, like, there's a break at 9 o'clock or whatever we all think. Over now.
Councillor
Lapinski?
Jarvis. Oh, sure. Let me go to Councillor Jarvis first, and then I'll be right to you, Councillor Lapinski.
Yeah, I have to say, Jeannie, I agree with you. And the older we get, the harder it is to get back up and stretch. So I think I would be in agreement to this. I know even sitting in my good, comfortable office chair here, after long meetings, it gets very hard to get up and move sometimes. So I think this would be great. I think it would be good to get the blood moving. It would probably get people refreshed, get people back in the mood. Just as long as people keep in mind that it's a 5-minute break and they shouldn't be running out to the store or whatever during the 5-minute break. That would be my only concern, but I think it's a great thing to do.
Councillor Lapinski.
So let's take a minute to get the pronunciation of my name correct. It's
Okay. Lapinski.
Just as long as we're on it, because it is Lapiensky, not Lapiensky.
Okay.
That said, all I want to say here is that under Section 8, Order and Disposition of Business, is my suggestion on the same subject, which was based on Councillor DeSorgers, and I just went more specific. So I wondered if it would make sense to take the two together because they're the same thing, and all I did was make a more specific idea based on Councillor DeSorgers' suggestion. I didn't have that idea independently.
Okay, let me just follow along in this. Did you have something on a recess? I'm sorry.
Yes, but I put it under Order and Disposition of Business, whereas Clerk Scott put DeSorgers under Rule 2 for some reason. So they're doing the same thing. Mine is more specific. I just thought rather than discuss them twice.
Sure, I'm just looking. I just wanted to find where yours was. So
Rule 8, disposition.
And what was your recommendation on that?
Page 44.
Yep. Okay, I see page 44. Yep. Go ahead. I see you're talking about item 3. During the time of the meeting, the city council shall at 90-minute intervals be automatically scheduled to take a 5-minute recess. If said time occurs during debate or when a motion is on the floor, the recess shall be held after the discussion arises, when the next recess will occur in 10 minutes or less. The chair shall ask for the pleasure of the council as to whether to recess before or after. Any recess may be skipped by majority vote. Breaks. As proposed by Councillor DeSorger, councillors may be embarrassed to interrupt proceedings in order to call for a recess, but all available signs suggest that sitting for more than an hour and a half is detrimental to our health. I think they are. I think this was a good point to talk about them both. I think you're right on that piece, and that could be added to this. So, Councillor Lapinski, did you have anything that, in my reading of your suggestion, have anything else to add to that piece?
Well, you skipped a line. It says, if said time occurs during debate or when a motion is on the floor, the recess shall be held after the question has been addressed and voted on. If a question on which the chair can reasonably is what I should have written, expect a lengthy discussion arises when the next recess will occur in 10 minutes or less, the chair shall ask for the pleasure of the council. In other words, you obviously don't want to interrupt a discussion item for a recess, but if we start the council at 6:30 and at 7:57 we go and take up, oh, I don't know, let's just pick something at random, section 7.7 of the charter, and it's going to go all night, the council president in this case would be directed to say, hey guys, this is going to go for a while. Do you want to take the recess first? And then we just, so, but again, what I did was I read the memo from Councilor DeSorger. The two of us spoke about it, and then I came up with what I thought was a more comprehensive solution to it. I thought it belonged in Rule 8. It seems like either Jenny or Kathy thought that it belonged in Rule 2. I don't know which it belongs under. I just don't think we need it in both places.
No, when we're done, we wouldn't have it in both places. We'll figure out where it should lie. Let's have some discussion on, I think the nature of this has merit. I just wonder where we are with opinions. Some more discussion on this, Councilor Forgy?
Thank you. I agree with the principle of all of it. I think it's really important when you've got these long meetings. I think it's very important for us to be able to get up. I appreciate the attempt to codify this, but I do want to say one thing is that the president of the council can use his or her discretion. If we were going to have, say, a 4-hour meeting, and after 2 hours we had a break, I think they should be able to say, let's take a break in an hour, let's take a break in an hour. I don't think we should exclude the ability of the council president to weigh in with their own judgment on what they see as necessary for the council itself. So again, I appreciate the codification. I think it's a great starting point, but I do think that council president, it should be optional for them to weigh in at any time when they think the council needs a break.
If anybody else that hasn't spoke wants to speak, thanks for that, Councilor Forgy. What I was thinking along the lines of what Councilor Forgy said is maybe we as the governing body, whether it's the president or a chair, at a 90-minute interval says, do we want to take a break? You know, does anyone want to take a break? We've been here for 90 minutes. You know, do we want to take a break? And then we wouldn't have to take a break if some, not that I don't want to go against what Jenny said, which was people are sometimes embarrassed to say, hey, I want to take a break. I got to hit the can. You know what I mean? But is there a piece where the president or chair could say, we've been, by rule of procedure, we've been going 90 minutes. Do we want to take a pause here? Or like Councilor Lapiensky said, do we, we're going to go and take this vote and we're going to get through this. And now that we're done, before we move on, do we want to take a quick break? Can it be that fluid or do we need it more well-defined?
Mine is fluid. It allows the council to vote to skip any recess.
That just lengthens. Anytime we have to stop and take a vote, then we lengthen what we're trying to shorten. And that's my only fear with some of that. It's like calling a question. It ends up taking longer to call the question and vote around than if we just finish discussion. So I just don't know if that would be discretionary to say that. Councilor DeSorger, what's your thoughts? Because this was a piece that you also were contributing to.
I have not seen that really be happening. And I don't, actually, we've been meeting remotely mostly, but I used to go all the time. And I thought putting one break in that people know is coming and that the television land know is coming also.
That's a
good idea.
Too.
I mean, this is the media is involved, and then the people would be used to seeing that and knowing that a break actually happens in the middle of the meeting. It could be, we actually moved it earlier. So you're talking 2.5 hours. So 8:30, just a time about which, without a vote, so that everybody knows we are going to get a chance to get up out of our chairs once, because you're on the stage too.
Right. Clerk Scott.
a thought while I'm sitting here listening, thinking of council meetings. Oftentimes, this is my opinion, please take it for what you will. Oftentimes, by the time the council gets to motions, orders, and resolutions, between communications with the mayor and the school committee and public comment, what if the agenda, the rules or procedure were to be amended to specifically build in a 5-minute break in between? If we all looked on page 43, after public hearing, before motions, orders, and resolutions, build in a 5-minute break to get everyone up and out of their chair, because it's probably going to be at least an hour or an hour and a half. And then, depending on how long the motions, orders, and resolutions were, that's when the president, at their discretion, could say, you know, we've been at this for another 2 hours. It's now 8:30, 9:30, and then independently call a 5-minute break.
I like the sounds of that. We'll come back. Councillor Bullock, you had your hand up. Did anyone lose Councillor Bullock? I see a red.
I'm here. Sorry, it started raining, so I had to come inside.
Okay. I just didn't know. Usually someone turns green. You turned red, so I wasn't.
So I don't know why I don't have like an off-camera button. I'm like stuck on camera on WebEx for some reason. So I didn't want to make you guys like motion sick when I moved inside. So the way I feel like is that we need to build in 5-minute breaks at a regular interval. I feel indifferent about the process or the language, both like whatever is easiest. But I think if we don't build it in, we won't do it. I'm in meetings all day long at work, and we say, get up when you need, stretch when you need, move your body when you need, and like no one does it. So like if we want to create a culture where we get up and do it, we have to get up and do it. So I'm in favor of doing this. I would hope that we could. I liked I sort of agree that like taking a vote feels like an extension. So I would like it to be a little more simpler to follow in the meeting of like, you know, at the 90-minute mark after the last or closest to the last discussion or whatever the thing is.
So building on what Clerk Scott said, if we were to put in one following public hearing, 9, after 9, that we, is that where you were, Clerk Scott, after we finish communications and public hearings, we say that there's a scheduled 5-minute break because we know that that's going to be some time. And then in a 2-hour interval, the president or chair will call for a 5-minute recess. And then we just follow that procedure. And then using a little bit of the language from Councillor Lapiensky saying, at 2 hours, we could say, well, we've been going, the clerk or the clerk assistant could say, we've been here 2 hours, and say, so after we finish the vote or we finish that discussion, we'll take a 5-minute break. And it gives that piece where we're not stopping in the middle of something that can't be stopped. Would that cover all the bases? I think it would. And then we'd have the one on, it would be on the agenda to have a break. And then following that one, we would, at 2 hours, we have the clerk that says someone's been talking for 3 minutes. We have the clerk but they said we've been at this 2 more hours.
Set a timer.
I think that could work. And then we could go from there and it wouldn't be as regimental. Councillor DeSorger, would that be along the line of what you were thinking?
I'm fine with that. It was just a something in there, whatever Perfect. Is the will of the group.
Councillor Lapiensky?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, and we can now.
What is the question? I
Just,
know what we're talking about, but I didn't have anything else to say.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure that given that you were a big contributor to this piece, would be having a break following agenda item 9 on the agenda, and then asking at 2-hour intervals after that break, reminding us that it's been 2 hours or thereabouts. When we're not in the process of a discussion, we ask for another break.
So whose job would it be to ask for the break then?
It would be the clerk, or who is watching times and compliance, to say it's been 2 hours. And then the chair or the president would say, we've been at this another 2 hours, let's take 5 minutes once we're done with this vote, or what have you.
Sure. So once again, this is something that Councilor DeSorger brought forward, and I just thought, since she brought it forward while I was in the process of writing up all the other stuff, so I just thought it would be helpful if I made a more specific version. I basically think anything that we do is going to be an improvement.
I
put forward in it because I think science says that we need to get up after 90 minutes, and 2 hours is longer than 90 minutes. I'm okay with either one. I just think that if we are science-minded people, we would go with the 90 minutes. If I were in charge, and God willing, you will never make me your council president, I will blast Johnny Cash and dance my something off during those 5 minutes, but I digress.
I can get that music for you anytime you need it. Clerk Scott, let's move forward with that latest recommendation as spoken, and then we can debate it when we get to the next piece on the specifics. Let's move forward. Now we are back to that was a 5-minute break. So now we're on special. So we're going to take the piece from Councilor Lapiansky and Councilor DeSorger and put it into item 2 there. Okay. Special meeting. Amend to reflect charter amendments when approved by the governor. Regarding proposed changes to the city charter in regards to physically delivering special and emergency meeting notices to each councilor and accepting electronic receipt. I think we all understand this. It was part of the charter process. This is saying we've changed the way, because of the new world, that we have additional ways we can receive special meeting notification. It would go in effect if that piece of the charter is amended. Is that correct, Clerk Scott? Tammy?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion on this? Okay, seeing none, let's move forward. This brings us to item C, which the strike-through is meeting with mayor and school committee, and it's from Councilor Lapiansky, which is communications from the mayor, school committee, and other city officials. Councilor Lapiansky, why don't you read your piece here so we can hear it with your inflection on your thought.
Got it. So I'll just preface it by saying that ever since my election, I've been watching council meetings, and as you're aware, I've been part of it since some of that time. And I also spent a tremendous amount of time watching Northampton City Council meetings in 2011 through 14. And so I can see what the difference is, and comparatively, we don't function efficiently. So my biggest frustration is the amount of time that we waste hearing the mayor and the superintendent of schools tell us everything that's ever happened within 50 miles. And then the council has questions, which I understand, and I've heard Councilor Ricketts say, you know, it's not really effective to ask questions in advance because sometimes you have questions about what they talk about. And I get that too, but we have council business to do, and these are members of the executive who are commandeering hours of our time. I've seen it go just in the last 6 months, an hour and a half or more before we even get to council business. And I think that that's, number one, inappropriate. Number two, when the public comment is after that, which is another thing I proposed to put it before, it's just not fair to the public. And then it's also the reason why our meetings go so long. If we took that piece out, we would never have a question of do we want to split the meeting in two, right? So here's what I wrote. First of all, I just changed the name of the section to reflect what it actually is. And I added the superintendent of schools to the list of people just to reflect what we already do. And then I added a subsection 1 that says the mayor individually, semicolon, the superintendent of schools, school committee representative, and or other school officials collectively, semicolon, and any other city officials invited by the chair individually, semicolon. Each shall be granted a maximum of 10 minutes, during which they may present information to the council and receive and respond to questions from councilors. This time shall only be extended by a 2/3 vote of the council, which, if passed, shall grant the presenter an additional 10 minutes. After this time, an additional 2/3 vote shall be required. And if you'll notice, if we even just have, let's say, Marla Warner present, even if we do not make any extensions, and 10 minutes is not a lot of time to respond to a large number of questions from counselors, but even if we don't extend it at all, that's already half an hour, which is a substantial amount of time if we have anything big on the agenda, right? As it's going now, it's unlimited, and, you know, I'm saying that because, yes, 10 minutes is a relatively strict limit. The council can obviously vote to extend it, but if we have a loose limit, like let's say we did 30 minutes per, we still could get to 90 minutes without any extensions, and that's just too long.
Okay, I appreciate that piece. Let me just start off before I recognize anybody else. I have a couple of, first of all, I agree with some of this, and don't get me wrong, and I'll go into that. But first of all, I want to make one comment. I don't think it's a waste. You said when you start off that it was a waste. I believe when counselors are making the decisions that we are put up with, I think getting an update from the mayor, from the school department, from a invited department head is kind of vital. That's where we find out what's going on. Now, I will agree that it used to be a much different presentation. When I was the first council president and Mayor Forgy was the first mayor and we reinstituted this piece, the mayor came with bullet points of updates. It was not a dissertation on everything that's happening everywhere. It was the mayor talked about this that might have come in as a positive piece for the town or what she was working on, but not necessarily reading it all into the record. And that goes for any of the departments. But I think it is an important interaction that we get an update because we're always wanting to know what's happening. I would not be terribly opposed if there was some sort of limit. I think you could say that there, that we request a not more than 20-minute update or something like that, where it puts it in some time frame and it's not open-ended without being specific. And Councilor Bullock said it earlier, anytime we start stopping and voting and stopping and voting and stopping and voting, we're adding the time back that I'd rather hear the mayor than to hear a roll call vote for the 5th time. So that's my opinion. I think there's merit to this. I just don't know how specific. Anyone else that wants to talk on this? Councilor Bullock?
Yeah, I'll say something. I stand by my voting statement. And I'm worried that the time limits on this would mean that we would be voting again and again and again. But I wonder if that's because I've been at meetings for the last few years, listening in and hearing and seeing how long that they go with the talking. And I just want to say, like, one person talking for 10 minutes is a long time for one person to talk uninterrupted. And so I agree with this in theory. I agree with efficiency for our meetings. Similarly, that we're saying like every hour and a half you stand up. There's, research that shows meetings over 2 hours are actually less efficient and less effective. And so I agree with that. I think finding a mechanism, my initial thought was that it was like a 10-minute and then it's by extension of the president or the chair. That sort of thing that makes it a little bit faster. But then, there would be concerns that it's just one person who's extending the voice of the mayor. So I agree with this in theory. I think I have to, I'd want to think on it a little bit more, the mechanism for it.
I agree. Any of the other counselors that haven't spoken that want to speak on this? Thoughts? Okay, I don't see any. If Councilor DeSorger, yep, please.
Because I put something for it. I just wanted you to know, 2 years ago, I looked when there was this was actually before I even got on. There are some other municipalities that limited like the amount of time that the citizens could talk. And I thought, well, that would not be something, talking more to people. That's not something that seems like everybody would like to have their 3 minutes. And I just threw that out as a sentence. It just seems like maybe we should have a little something with an idea of how long something should be, and maybe we shouldn't. So that's all I wanted to speak on it because I wrote it in a sentence. But that's again, what everybody else thinks matters to me.
I think we've got to find a mechanism here that works, and it doesn't sound like we're, and I want to avoid voting, like voting to extend things. Like I said, maybe there's a happy medium that we say this, this time is limited to 15 minutes unless there's extenuating circumstances, and then we could, Councilor Lapinski.
So just two things. One, yes, it's always nice to defer to the chair. In this case, the council president was in the military and is a master of endurance, and I think that there's no time limit that would. With that said, I propose that we make it a non-debatable vote so that it's just an up or down vote, and if we get 2/3, the time's extended, and that would resolve that issue.
Good thought. Okay. Anything else? For anyone? I just want to see how we're going to move forward on this. Do we just want to be thinking about this time element, and when we come back for discussion, we give it some thought? Does that sound agreeable to everybody? That Councilor Bullock, that you mentioned you want to think about it. Let's leave it as let's figure out a mechanism that might be appropriate and appealing to all, whether we go with a single vote to extend 2/3 majority, whatever, or go forward. Can we, Clerk Scott, can we make something a 2/3 majority in the rules of procedure? I mean, do we have that ability? When we were talking about earlier, we were saying we can't force people to do anything. Can we say that it takes majority or 2/3 majority on our own rule of procedure?
Off the top of my head, I'm going to say yes, but I'm also going to look into it further.
Okay, so let's move on from this. And when we come back from discussion, we'll have a little better understanding of the specifics of time. Does that, I think we've got to just, move forward on this and see how we're going to get it done. Because I think some limitations are warranted to keep our meetings focused more than length. And I think that could help us all. Moving forward, quorum. Clerk Scott, D, we're adding charter section 26-B.
Sure. So a couple of things. Tammy can only stay on for a little bit more. So if we want her to comment on any section, if it's agreeable to the chair, maybe we should ask for that. And all this section does, again, Tammy brought this in here, all it does is reference the charter section that comments or mentions a quorum of the council into the rules of procedure. So it's just a reference.
Any questions on this? So I don't have a problem with that. Does anyone have any? Okay, let's move forward. Let me just make note here. It is now 7:20. We have been at this over 90 minutes and under 120. So we're at that point where we either need to take a break or we decide that if we're going to keep this meeting for another hour or so, do we just continue? I'm open to suggestion, but we are at that critical time. Councilor Forgy. You're muted.
Always gets me. I agree that, yeah, that, we're at a almost 2-hour mark here. So I think that we should try to, we've done some interesting work this evening. So I think we should just end with item F, open meeting. But before we do, I do want to say that E, attendance, nobody has taken that up as an issue. And I wonder if there's any, what's the right word I'm looking for here? If there's any need, unaddressed need, or if there's any discussion that the council wants to have on this particular item. It's 10 meetings, unexcused. We've now put some language in place that helps us with people that might be out of town or, in the hospital or wherever they are and they want to attend, they can attend remotely. So I would like to go back and examine attendance, not me personally. I think we should all, go back and do the attendance piece and compare it to what we already did when we were talking about the rules of procedure for council, and again, the virtual pieces and attending, from out of town and those types of things. So maybe that's a good stopping place, is we just mark it off as something we probably need to look at.
I think that it would be a better bookmark to go to the end of Rule 2. Although I don't feel strongly about it, I think it just might be a little bit neater.
I'm sorry, Councilor Lapinski, what was that?
I was just saying, I think it might be a neater bookmark if we were to wrap up after the end of Rule 2 rather than after Rule 2F when there's a Rule 2.
I agree with that. Councilor Jarvis.
With wrapping up.
Councilor Jarvis.
I would suggest that we wrap up now. It's been a long day. And it's going to be a longer night tomorrow night. I just hope that this committee can keep in mind we have Ways and Means tomorrow night, which is going to be a long meeting. We have the schools. I am actually about 16 hours and a half into my day. So I am pretty tired right now. I would appreciate a stop at this point.
Okay. Is there anyone else that hasn't spoken on any of this that would like to continue? So we're asking for, let's stop our discussion right now on the rules of procedure. We'll just stop. Is there anything under new business? Is there anything under old business?
I'm not sure that this is a business that I want to discuss. I'm just wondering if we have a sense of when we're going to get to the language that I proposed regarding Section 7.7, or if that's still up in the air, because I have a lot of constituents calling me about that.
You and I had this conversation this week on the phone, and I said that it was my thoughts that it would come to the floor in June for discussion within this committee, and I haven't changed my mind in the last 2 days.
5 days, but yeah, okay. Just making sure we're on track for that. That's my preference for timeline too. I was just wondering.
I can't guarantee it. As I said to you, it depends on, you can see now, we're doing rules of procedure. We're on page 39, we're on section 2, and we have 14 rules. So, you don't know how long these things, and then we have to go back to the code of ethics. So my hope is that we get to it as soon as we can, but it will be on a future agenda.
Given that there's the amount of interest from the public, I would like to suggest that should it come to that we delay the rules of procedure for a month at that point so that we can get to that section, only because there's that amount of public interest in the rules of procedure. We haven't had so many comments. That's all.
I'll take that under advisement, but we're gonna we'll move forward based on where we are and how we've always conducted business. But thank you. Anything else under old business? Our next meeting is May 11th at 5:30. City Clerk Scott, when are we switching to live meetings? Has that been discussed yet for committees? No. Yes?
So for committees, we're still remaining virtual.
Okay.
The executive order continues until July 15th.
Okay. And I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, because we read that, City Hall or WebEx. So our anticipation is May 11th will be via WebEx. Is there anything I've missed?
Well, the president's order is that we'll be resuming in-person subcommittee meetings in June, even though the executive order from the governor goes till July.
I'm not aware of that.
I don't know. I don't think I've seen that. So
I don't remember that either.
Clerk Scott? Clerk Scott?
So I believe the vote by the council was to go back to in-person meetings for council meetings, and that subcommittees would remain virtual. I don't believe there was in that vote, and I could be mistaken, I don't believe there was in that vote something that said that subcommittees would be in person in June or after the end of June.
Okay, thanks. Oh, I'm sorry.
We can get clarification and look in the minutes and look at the vote, and we'll see what.
And can you just send that out to full council on my recommendation? A motion to adjourn.
So moved, Jarvis.
Second, 4G.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? I will call this meeting to adjournment at 7:30 on the dot. Thank you all very much. Councilor Bullock, I'll be reaching out to you for our project, and I look forward to that. And Clerk Scott, we look to condense what we've said, and we'll continue with discussion at our next meeting. Thank you all. Good night.
Good night. Thank you all very much.